flap of Derek's palm. He'd been inside her before they remembered he hadn't worn a condom. By then, nothing short of a tsunami could have stopped them. Ginger remembered it clear as a bell, as if it had taken place 5 minutes ago instead of 6 weeks prior. There had been an illicitness to their lovemaking, as if the risk were adding a whole new element. Knowing they were gambling, in a sense, had made them twice as wild. He'd finished with a roar, then flipped her over and taken her again. Harder. Ginger cleared her throat in the silent room. Well, I seem to have sorted out the when, and I'll be keeping it to myself, Dolly, if you don't mind. Now on to the why now. She glanced over at the framed picture of her and Derek that sat on her bedside table. Derek kissing her forehead, arms wrapped around her protectively. Always protecting. So solid and reassuring. The picture had been taken by Willa, her photographer younger sister, when they were both unaware. It was the main reason she loved the picture. No posing or false smiles, just the two of them as they were at that moment. Happy, at peace. Would this unexpected news change that? Yes, they loved each other. Yes, this last year, without question, had been the happiest in her 24 years. But this... a baby? It would change everything. They'd never even discussed having children. Although, to be fair, she suspected Derek would avoid that topic at the risk of sending her screaming for the hills. He knew every gory detail about her shitty upbringing, her issues surrounding family. Her mother had been a drug addict and a prostitute who turned tricks in their living room. Not exactly a shining example of motherhood in all its glory. One of the insecurities she and Derek had set out to overcome was her intense fear of commitment. After watching her mother being used and discarded regularly, she'd never envisioned herself in a relationship. She'd only moved in with Derek a few months ago, and while she loved him to an astonishing degree, it had been a monumental decision for her. The stubborn man had all but tricked her into it. A baby epitomized commitment. A lifetime's worth of it. She wasn't sure she was ready for that kind of thing. Even if she was, what about Derek? She thought of herself 9 months pregnant, wearing maternity clothes to accommodate her swollen belly, and allowed the tiny niggle of worry to creep in at the image. At age 14, she'd realized men liked the way she looked. Sure, she'd used it to her advantage, even while luring Derek into what she'd thought would be a purely physical encounter. She didn't waste a moment regretting it either. Use what you've got had been the words she'd lived by for so long. But since breaking free of her past and taking control of her life, she'd stopped relying on them. Her body shape didn't define her anymore. Her self-confidence had grown exponentially since moving to Chicago and meeting Derek. She was now a businesswoman, an actual role model to the sister she loved, yet she always knew the looks were at her disposal, if she needed them. And perhaps a small leftover part of her past self was worried that Derek wouldn't want her as much with cankles. She hated thinking that way. It was vain and silly. And yet, you understand, right, Dolly? You never leave the house without your sequined bustier and blonde wig. Okay, now that time the statue definitely shook its head disapprovingly. Pregnancy was apparently already taking its toll on her sanity. Don't look at me like that. Everyone knows about the wigs and no one here is judging you. Especially the pregnant lady talking to a damn statue. Raising a baby was simply not in her wheelhouse. While she may have grown emotionally and shed most of her hang-ups, it didn't mean she was ready for another human being to be completely dependent on her. She'd managed to raise Willa, now majoring in photography in college, through trial and error. Lord knew she'd made plenty of mistakes along the way. There'd been no time to prepare for this. She doubted it was on Derek's radar either, not with his heavy workload, the way his peers relied on him. He'd been honored by the department earlier that year for his work in a sting operation involving 2 local gangs. She'd watched him accept his plaque from the Chicago Police Commissioner to thunderous applause from his colleagues.